All right, it is Friday, June 10th, 2022. It rained like crazy last night. We had a heck of a storm. I washed off my driveway yesterday and cleaned it up real good with some Dawn dish soap and a scrub brush, and then rinsed it with the hose. You still kind of see the outline from the mess. So I'll probably have to use the pressure washer on it, so I'll do that again later after I make a mess again in the next couple of days. So what I'm working on now, these are the original heads off the truck, and I'm going to, I've actually got one soaking in the Purple Power right now. It's almost fully submerged. If I had another gallon, it would definitely do it. So those are soaking. I'm gonna let them soak for a while because they are super greasy. Probably half a day, I would say. So I started dismantling the stuff off the cylinder heads because they had all kinds of crap on them, obviously. This has got some funky bracket on the back that the spark plug wires, plastic thing that's connected to them snaps onto. It was pretty greasy, so I threw it in there as well. But I've been doing little videos on my cell phone, little shorts to do, you know, showing where everything's at, what size hardware and all that. So it's a little bit easier for me to put it back together because even though this truck is relatively simple, there's a lot of little stuff here and there, and I don't want to mix match up the hardware and all that kind of crap. I want to put it back together exactly like it's supposed to be. So I was thinking about rebuilding my throttle body today, but I'm out of carb cleaner and I'm going to need probably at least a few cans of it. It sucks being stranded. I can't just run over here to the parts store, you know what I mean? My mom and dad has 3 doctor's appointments today, so it's just not gonna work out in my favor to borrow their car. So my wife is off this weekend and she's not going to her mother. She's gonna be here with me, so I might wait till tomorrow to get a lot of the stuff. So today's just gonna be a little bit of random stuff, cleaning up stuff and that type of crap, just working on little stuff. I do need to clean all the head bolts on the wire wheel. That's probably gonna take quite a while. They're under the flex plate. I soaked them in degreaser, but you know, I need to clean them up on the wire wheel and get them working good so they'll torque well. I am gonna use my portable sandblaster and I'm gonna blast some of this stuff, this stack here, which is the intake, timing cover, water neck outlet, and actually I don't think I'm gonna blast the oil pan because that media might get stuck up underneath this baffle, and I sure don't want that stuff going in there. So I'll clean it and sand it by hand, but these other pieces, they got flaking paint and everything. It's just a mess. This intake's a garbage mess, man. So I'm gonna clean up the EGR port here really well and put duct tape on it and then kind of trace it out with a razor blade, and that way I don't get no blast media down in there. I'm gonna cap this, I'm gonna cap that. I'm gonna try to keep the media out of the intake, and definitely not getting it down in that plenum underneath. They have like a thing under them that stuff can get into. I think the EGR, one side of that goes into that. So a little bit of prep to do to that before I blast it. I actually probably ought to degrease it first, because that blaster of mine, it doesn't remove grease. It just kind of sticks to it. So I got lots of little tedious crap to do. I'm not going to paint everything on the engine, not going to paint every single thing. Like these brackets, I'm not going to paint them. The air cleaner, I'm not going to paint. I just want the engine block, the long block intake and all that cleaned up and painted. I'm actually going to use Duplicolor engine spray paint, but I'm using Ford Semi-Gloss. It's always on the shelf at my O'Reilly's down here, so that's what I'm going to use. The bad thing about using gloss black on an engine is when you do have an oil leak, it is hard to find because the engine's so shiny. So if you use a semi-gloss or a semi-flat, if you've got a shiny spot on that engine, you've got an oil leak or an antifreeze leak. So I will be using Ford Semi-Gloss. I did think about painting it the corporate GM blue, like from the 70s and 80s. That was really only the cars that done that. I'm not sure what year they cut off in the 80s from doing the blue, but the truck engines were black, and I thought about doing blue, but it's just, you know, kind of keeping with the original style theme. I don't really want to do that. It's kind of too big of a change, basically. So I'm not going to do that. I still need to pull the condenser out and flush it out. I'm going to flush it really good, and then all the air conditioning stuff will get new O-rings. I bought a complete O-ring kit for this, so all of them will be replaced. I got the new compressor, new dryer, and a new orifice tube. So the air conditioning was working until the compressor bearings started going out, and it was actually leaking my Freon out, and I have traces of green air conditioning stuff here. You kind of see that's green looking right there. So apparently a seal was going out or whatever, but it worked for quite a while. It's nice when you have air conditioning on something and then you don't have it. It kind of sucks. Especially having a little black dog. When I take her to the park, you know, she gets, you know, really hot and she's panting and stuff, and we get back in the car, it doesn't have air conditioning. It kind of sucks, because once she gets in a vehicle from the park with air conditioning, she pretty much gets in the line of the vent and just keeps her face aiming right at it to cool down. That's pretty amazing that when I'm thinking about getting the air fixed on this truck back up and running, I'm thinking more of the dog than I am myself. So if you didn't think I'm a dog guy, well, now you know. I don't know that there's much more stuff to clean. I've cleaned up quite a bit of stuff. I've wire wheeled a lot of bolts. It would just, you know, if I had to go in and detail paint and clean every single part, it would take hours to do that. I've got some downtime because they're not going to get a whole lot done today, but a lot of the stuff I would normally use my little portable blaster on, and I'm out of media, so I can't blast anything. I am looking at this fan clutch on this mechanical clutch fan here, and it looks like it's been seeping a little bit. So this is a pretty important component to have on an engine when you have air conditioning. So I may replace that. The thing that sucks is these things are pretty expensive. They're on average around 40 to 50 or 60 bucks, I think. So I think it'd be a good time to go ahead and replace it. It wasn't loose. I did check it before I tore the engine apart. It does have a little tension on it when you try to spin it, but I don't ever remember hearing this thing kicking in and out. You know, usually you can hear them kicking in and out, and I don't recall ever hearing that. This is usually the sign when they're starting to go anyway. They start seeping. So all right, so I dug through my box here of small block Chevrolet engine hardware stuff, and I found the bolts I was looking for. I also found this. This is a CVR brand new black anodized aluminum fuel pump block-off plate that I could put on the truck, but I doubt I do. I'll probably save that for a street rod or hot rod or something. So what come off this engine was this style timing cover bolt. This is your standard 1/4x20. You know, it takes a 7/16 wrench and it has a star washer. But when it's on these small block timing covers, I had to use a really thin wall socket to get down in there to it, because it has this rolled edge right here. So my idea was to use some of these flanged head 1/4x20s that I think take 3/8. So this is going to be easier for me to get a socket on there, and they just overall look better. So I'm going to use them. I had a ton of those. I actually started digging these out. These were longer than these. So I went over, started putting them in the timing cover spot on the engine, and there's 3 or 4 of them across the top that they don't go all the way in. The rest of them, it'll bottom completely out, which you do have the thickness of the cover and the gasket, but I just didn't want to take a chance, so I'm not going to use those. I did find star washers, some black ones, so I'm going to go ahead and put those on these bolts so those don't back off on me. But I ended up having a full set, and these are all the same. The head identification, you know, marks in them all match. That's another thing that kind of I like to do. But so anyway, I got the bolts for the timing cover, and I got star washers. So that's going to be pretty cool. And it is starting to rain again. Blue skies. Yeah, I guess it's kind of dark over me though. I don't think I'm going to have to worry. It's not pouring. I just hear it on my roof here of the. I found these in there. I always grab these when I'm at a local pull-apart salvage. There are bigger ones though, so you have to be careful what size you get. Now these smaller ones, these actually, if you have an Edelbrock intake and it has that square part on the front of the intake and it has usually a little tag and it says Made in USA or whatever, this actually fits right over that. So if you wanted a GM, badge to put on your Edelbrock intake for a little detail. These are off a lot of late model GM vehicles. They're usually down on the door, I think, or the fender or something. There's no telling what these come off of. I know for sure HHRs have them, but do keep in mind that there is a bigger one. You don't want, I don't think that's the one you want. Hold that thought. All right guys, so this is what I was talking about. This is an Edelbrock air gap intake, and some intakes, Edelbrocks have a tag on here. It's a real paper thin one. You don't even need to remove it. You can just silicone it on there, but the smaller of the two GM badges here, that pretty much goes right on there, and you can silicone it on there. It's kind of neat, kind of a, to customize or detail or whatever. So I calipered it, and it's 1.004 inches, which is pretty much an inch. Millimeters is 25.50 millimeters. So if you do go to eBay to get one of them little badges, that's the measurement, just so you don't get the big one by mistake, because actually that one would still work if you wanted the big one. So I guess it really doesn't matter. I don't know what size that one is. 30.19 millimeters and 1.188.5 inches. So I did this to an engine I had. I think it was my Monte Carlo SS. I had an 87 that had 18s on the front, 20s on the back, and it was really, really low. Had a dome piston small block of nitrous on it. It went 1189, I think. 1198. One of the two. Anyway, I had the engine all painted. Intake and all was painted, I think black. And I put that badge on there, but I took a little black on a brush and put it down in the GM logo and the bar, and then just wiped it off with some enamel reducer or urethane reducer or whatever. So it had a black logo down in there. You could do the blue like GM has, or whatever, but I know it's getting a little stupid with detail, but that's what I live for. I'm just full of tech little tippies today. So this is a Harbor Freight digital caliper. I've had it for a long time. It ended up not working. Even after I replaced the battery, it wouldn't work. It was like intermittent working, like it would come on and then it'd go right back out. What it ended up being was those 4 Phillips screws on the back right there, and little bitty teeny tiny ones. I tightened those back up, and it's worked fine ever since. So just in case somebody's got one of these and they put a new battery in and it doesn't work. It takes a watch style battery, and it has a little slide thing here, and there's a battery in there. They usually come with new ones when you buy one, I think. All right, for you guys looking to put a cam in a small block Chevrolet, what I sometimes used to use was just a long bolt, like a 5 or 6 inch long bolt. This is 5/16 by 18 on your thread. Anyway, you can stick the bolt in there, run it down a little bit, and you've got a handle to hold on to get the camshaft in there. But if you have an old junk box of air tools and parts and grinders and that type of stuff, you might have one of these. This is off an old buffer or grinder, I don't even remember, but you can also put that in there. Now, this was actually metric, but it had kind of the equivalent to 5/16, you know what I'm saying? It's not quite the right thread. It would like go in and turn a couple of turns and then kind of get tight. So I ran a die on there, a 5/16 by 18 die, and run it down, and it's still got plenty of thread, and it works just fine. And then you can have a handle to hold on to put your camshaft in, which is pretty awesome. Everybody's probably got one of those laying around somewhere, I would imagine. I wouldn't, mess up the threads to use it on your cam and still try to put it back on your buffer, but if you have an old one laying around, you can use that. But a bolt works just fine if that's, what you want to do. Once you get that cam pretty far in there, like this last part hanging out, it is, well, that much of it hanging out from that one, it's kind of sometimes a pain to try to get in there, hold on to it with just your hand, and more likely you can't do it. You've got to have some kind of handle to screw down in there to get leverage to push down, to get it up in there. But a bolt will work just fine, and somebody's probably got a bolt. It doesn't have to be that long, just long enough to at least get a few fingers on, I guess. Probably getting a spam risk call. I better answer it and jack with them a little bit. All right, so I got this heavy ass tote down from my top of my bench over there. Trying to find a new battery cable. It looks like this one. Looks like this one will do the trick. I definitely want to use red because both of them's black, which I think is kind of silly. This is just all kinds of stuff, wiring related in here. I've got a bunch of this stuff, but I don't want to use it on the truck. I'll just use this. It's here and it's red, so it does look like it's brand new. Might use that. I don't like that it's almost pink colored. I have up here a battery box. Trunk mount battery kit, I should say. Let's see what this looks like. I bought this for my 55 and ended up buying the clear shielded amplifier cable. Kinds of little goodies in it. Grommets and clamps. I'm going to use this one. Put this one back in here. This can be used for another trunk mount cable someday. Yeah, we'll go with that. Alright, well, that'll work out pretty cool. What gauge is that? 2 gauge. Nice. Alright, so I got the lug off and I got these opened up a little bit. So I cleaned this on the wire wheel. I cleaned it up pretty good. So what I'll do is after I get it put on and soldered and everything, I'm just going to kind of smear it with dielectric compound. It'll kind of keep some of the corrosion down a little bit. Well, it's not super pretty, but it got the job done. So I re-crimped it, but I soldered it, and I double layered the heat shrink on there. So I put dielectric grease. Before I put the heat shrink on, I put dielectric grease on that, and then put the heat shrink on and locked it down. That'll kind of help keep the corrosion down a little bit. In theory, anyway. So I put the original battery cable in here because it's covered in car grease. So let that loosen some of that stuff up, and then I'll use the hose and wash it off, and then I'm going to try to get them clamps back off there and put those on the new one. This one actually goes to the frame up here on the frame rail. That end of the cable's kind of clean, but this one here is really nasty. So that cable comes down off that battery and goes down here and clamps on here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that one and put on there as well. But that cable's quite a bit longer, so I'm going to leave it that long, and I'm going to wait because I have the universal battery clamps that, you know, you just strip off a little bit of the shielding and you bolt it down on there. So that'll end up working out pretty good, because I may have to route it just a little bit cleaner and it may need to be a little bit longer. Time for lunch.